Hi everyone, I'm Anne Riddell and welcome to Arts in the City. First up, an oasis in the city. Strolling through a magnificent collection of flowers is one of life's great pleasures. Donna Hanover takes us inside the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, a picture-perfect place for people and plants.
Mother Nature is a brilliant artist, especially when it comes to plants and flowers, and Brooklyn Botanic Garden is a showcase for many of the most dazzling. Kate Fermoile is the Director of Exhibitions and Interpretation.
Brooklyn Botanic Garden is a gem of an oasis right here in the middle of the city.
Brooklyn Botanic Garden, known as BBG for short, broke ground in 1911 on land that had been an ash heap. Special areas were designed, like the Children's Garden, where city kids could try growing their own vegetables, as they still do today. The Japanese Hill and Pond Garden, restored in the year 2000, and the Shakespeare Garden, which first opened in 1925 to teach people about the bard and his famous works through gardening. More than 80 kinds of plants mentioned in Shakespeare's plays and poems grow in this English cottage-style garden, and many of them have a quote from his works, like this one from The Winter's Tale: "Not yet on summer's death, nor the birth of trembling winter, the fairest of flowers of the season are our carnations and streaked gillivores." Other areas include the Cherry Esplanade for seeing cherry blossoms in the spring, several indoor conservatories, and the Woodland Garden. There's also the Discovery Garden, managed by Karen Wiley, who explains why it's unusual.
So we've got a lot of different plants, especially in this garden, with things that look interesting, that might feel interesting, or even smell interesting.
And you can touch.
And you can touch in this garden, that's right.
BBG also has programs where you can do everything from making flower arrangements to helping kids learn about plants and climate change to competing for the greenest block in Brooklyn. A key theme for this year is Natural Attractions, a plant pollinator love story.
The flower makes nectar to lure the insect to it. As that insect is traveling from flower to flower to flower, collecting more nectar, getting more energy, collecting more and more of that pollen, it's also dropping off some pollen.
Half of the pollinators here in the United States are at risk, and that's devastating to plants and to people and to all living things. We wanted to highlight that story in an effort to introduce people to their insect neighbors. It's always easier for people to have empathy and want to help protect something if they understand it.
Specific wasps, moths, bees, and butterflies are needed by specific plants. You can have fun learning about this.
We've got kind of a 70s themed dating game exhibit in our conservatory, so you'll be able to match our pollinator suitors with their best suited plant partners.
And if you like love stories, you'll definitely want to see BBG's world-famous Cranford Rose Garden. Director of Horticulture, Shauna Moore, says roses have universal appeal.
They mean so much to so many different people, but also this is a great place to propose. We've had many, many people propose, and so there's a lot of love that happens here.
There are more than 5,000 rose plants here, including species roses, the very first roses ever discovered, and old garden roses, some of which have been raised since the 1600s. Shauna showed us some modern varieties that will bloom into the early fall.
This is Desmond Tutu. This is a gorgeous red, and it's really fragrant. There are a lot of roses named after people that are famous.
What is this called?
This is Peggy Martin, and she is a fantastic rose. She's actually quite a vigorous grower. She'll grow up to 20 feet in one season. And this rose was found at a woman's home, Peggy Martin. It was a Hurricane Katrina survivor.
Next up is a shrub rose called limoncello.
It will bloom all summer long, and it has these semi-double roses on it. You can see all of these buds, so they're going to continue to open, and it will be so floriferous and beautiful.
Floriferous means?
Oh, just flowerful, yes. But it kind of has different shades and different hues of yellow, so you've got a really hot, intense yellow, and then a very creamy, soft, pale yellow.
Figuring out what you can view when you visit Brooklyn Botanic Garden is easy. On the website, there's a bloom calendar, so you can see at a glance which months your favorite plants and flowers are likely to be at their full glory. I'm Donna Hanover for Arts in the City.
A favorite song, a familiar melody, music can affect how we feel almost instantly. But it's more than simply a mood booster. Music can also be therapeutic, as we saw during a recent visit to a Brooklyn school.
Hello to music. Hello.
The power of music to change lives. It's a lesson these children at PS3 in Brooklyn have learned firsthand through music therapy.
What makes me want to come to music therapy is how we're in a small group and it's like sitting around a campfire and talking with your friends and not being interrupted by other students because of the small group and how we all respect each other.
Happy birthday to you.
The music therapy program here is part of a larger effort by the Brooklyn Conservatory of Music. It brings licensed creative arts music therapists to thousands of children and adults across the city. Therapists who are trained in multiple instruments and specialties, including areas like special education and psychology.
What we are is therapists who use music for some kind of growth or development or change. The way that we use music is really dependent on the population of people that we're serving and the individual kids or adults or seniors that we're working with.
Car?
Principal Christina Beecher says music therapy gives students a way to cope with the emotions and issues that can impact their academic lives.
Anything that you feel, children feel it too. So maybe it's an adult issue, but somehow it transfers to children. And if we don't give them a space to be able to support their emotions and be able to express it, then we lose them academically.
Does playing the drums change the way you feel?
Another fascinating piece of this, music can become both a release and a source of structure.
I think the thing people don't maybe notice so much about music is that it's inherently organizing. There's a pulse, there's a beat, and the act of being on the beat is organization. And so what we're doing is experiencing the organization as well as the expression, right? We can discharge emotion and then experience organization and then process that verbally.
It's time to say
goodbye. And it's been an amazing time. It's been so nice and wonderful, and how it affects me is makes me feel better than I normally would.
Goodbye. Till next time. Next time.
Ballet Hispanico is one of the largest Latinx cultural organizations in the United States and an artistic treasure. Our intern Megan Gleason spoke with their CEO about the ballet's humble start and bright future.
What started in 1970 with one woman and her dream is now the largest Latino cultural organization in the United States. Ballet Hispanico was founded on the principle that everyone deserves to dance. Tina Ramirez started the company not only to teach dance, but to inspire leaders. One of her former dancers, now CEO and artistic director Eduardo Valero, said this about Tina.
Tina was fierce. She was 4'2", an incredible artist, incredible woman. Do you know what it is for a woman to create a major dance company in New York City back in 1970? Remarkable, up against so much.
Eduardo told us about his experience as a new dancer to the company.
And it was a remarkable thing because, I walked into this space where people were speaking Spanish, because when I was growing up in the late 70s, my family did not allow me to speak Spanish in the streets or outside of the home. So to recapture cultural identity, to reaffirm that it's okay to be who I am was remarkable.
At their spring performance, they celebrated Valero's quinceañera as artistic director of the company. They performed Buscando a Juan, a piece inspired by Afro-Hispanic painter Juan de Pareja, originally seen as a live art exhibition looking for Juan at the Met.
Why I was so excited is because Juan de Pareja is a reflection of who I am. No one knows if he was mestizo, if he was from Africa direct, or if he was a Muslim African. The mixing of cultures is exactly, for me, I'm from Cuba with Afro, Spanish, and Asian background. So I loved that another artist who was so little known but was so important is being uplifted. So I created a work about him.
The company will resume performances in August. Beyond dance, Ballet Hispanico emphasizes community building and education, offering classes for adults and children of all ages. For Valero, an educator himself, this means a lot.
I think it's one of my most favorite things to do and my most rewarding. So when I have kids, after years that I'd never seen them, come back to me and say, "Hey, Mr. Valero, do you remember me? It was because of your class that I'm now at Boston Conservatory." That is life-changing, seismic, right? I've been given awards, we performed for presidents, nothing like that moment.
Ballet Hispanico offers in- and after-school programs and workshops to students across 45 public schools throughout New York City. The hope is not just to educate them, but connect kids to culture.
Then you also understand the intersectionality of who we are as people, and that's very big, and that's something that I think we try to give to young students here. We try to give them the tools not only to become artists, but also to be citizens of the world, and how important it is to understand the depth of culture.
Ballet Hispanico is dedicated to bringing communities together and exploring Hispanic culture through dance. You could check out one of their performances in August to end the summer season. I'm Megan Gleason for Arts in the City.
From ballet to bling. A new exhibit at the American Museum of Natural History celebrates hip-hop's cultural influence through the stunning jewelry worn by some of its iconic stars. Our Andrew Falzon takes a diamond-studded first look.
A crown fit for a king, a gold eagle bracelet fit for a falconer, pendants reminiscent of two toys, and even a big-ass chain. These are just some of the incredibly creative pieces of jewelry on display at the American Museum of Natural History as part of its newest exhibit, Ice Cold, an exhibition of hip-hop jewelry.
The pieces, these are all loaned pieces to us. They'll just be here for the run of the show. And so this idea of bringing culture up to the present day, I think, was what really excited us.
The basis of the exhibit is the book Ice Cold, published by Taschen and authored by Vicky Toback, who lent her expertise to natural history as the exhibit's guest curator. She spent decades chronicling the genre that resonated with her from a very early age.
I was raised on Motown, funk, soul, and a lot of kind of cultural stuff that, was very much informative of hip-hop culture and the music. So when I started hearing the music as a teenager, I knew that I needed to get to New York and somehow be part of it.
With so many pieces of jewelry on display, multiple generations of hip-hop are represented. In fact, there are so many pieces, there's sure to be one that every fan can connect with. That glimmering costume jewelry crown and eye patch belongs to 80s rapper, producer, and Bronx native Slick Rick. The eagle bracelet to Ghostface Killah, a rapper from Staten Island who helped bring together the original 8 members of the Wu-Tang Clan in the 90s. Hailing from Harlem, A$AP Rocky came on the scene in the late 2000s and can claim credit for the 14-karat Lego pendant accented with diamonds, sapphires, and rubies. The 54-karat Barbie pendant was made in 2022 for Nicki Minaj, who grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. She contributed to the 2023 hit film soundtrack and is known for commissioning Barbie pendants since 2009. The exhibit is housed in a boutique gallery in the museum's recently redesigned Mignoni Hall of Gems.
Gems are products of the natural world, and jewelry represents how those gems are transformed into expressions of individual and cultural identity.
While many of the pieces on display are the epitome of ostentatious, others carry deep personal meaning, like the piece on loan from Queens native Roxanne Shante.
My ring is a juice screw ring, and one of the things about a juice screw ring is that you couldn't purchase it. It was something that you had to earn in hip hop. And the reason why is because you had to do it with good deeds. So it was one of those things where you took care of families. Maybe you might have paid for someone's funeral or sponsored a bus trip or helped someone with their rent or maybe even diffused a situation that may have escalated into someone losing their life or something like that. Having that ring just represented having respect. It showed that you had what we used to call juice, meaning having respect in the neighborhood. And people understood that you also had the ability to make things happen.
Another piece with a personal connection is this white and rose gold diamond-encrusted QB pendant that belongs to Nas, an homage to his upbringing in the Queensbridge houses, a public housing development, which may be the underscore of the exhibit's more subtle story.
If anyone was to ask me to sum up the Ice Cold exhibit, my main thing would say it's going from poverty to priceless. It's showing you all of the things in between. You know, what our goal was, to be able to take a genre of music that people said wasn't going to be around long, that they said had an expiration date. And now being able to see it here and for people to understand that it's now priceless and hip hop is included in everything.
Ice Cold runs until January 5th, 2025. I'm Andrew Falzon for Arts in the City on CUNY TV.
The garment district in Midtown once produced 70% of the nation's women's clothing and 40% of men's. Some remnants of that history are lost to time, but a Midtown restaurant is trying to preserve it, one sewing machine and hat box at a time. Our Pacheco gets a tour.
At the turn of the last century, the garment district was one of New York City's leading manufacturers. In its heyday, the area produced most of the clothes bought and sold across the entire nation. But you'd hardly know that now, as production has mainly shifted overseas. That is, unless you stepped into a restaurant on West 36th Street and spoke with Mark Fox, a 46-year-old Irish-born restaurateur.
This building was originally a garment factory, and I was intrigued at the history of the building itself, and I set about to try learn a little bit more about it and see if we could incorporate, you know, the history of the building into our brand belief at the time, and it became quite a journey of the heart, really.
That journey started in 2016. When Mark signed the lease on an office space which had once been, in the 1950s, Sam Landorf and Company and Bo Peep Manufacturing, both of which made children's clothing. In the course of renovating 3 levels for his restaurant above and the lounge below, which he named Bo Peep, the building began to reveal its secrets, including the original factory floor and other echoes of its faded past.
We tore down the walls and we discovered the original brick walls of the factory walls as well. And I wanted to come up with a name for the restaurant that wouldn't be kitschy, but would also pay homage to the history of the building. And I settled on the Ragtrader because I thought it was a kind of a cute nod to the rag trade. And then, you know, I didn't want it to be this cold, industrial restaurant. I wanted to have flair and, you know, a little bit of femininity in it.
Mark liked the idea of marrying the gritty aspects of the garmento world with the fashion industry it serviced, especially when it came to women's styles. One of the popular areas of the restaurant is what's called the hat box, a reference to the days before the 1960s when a woman wouldn't dream of going outside without one. In the late 60s, that custom fell out of favor as Elaine Stritch lamented in the Broadway musical Company.
Does anyone still wear a hat?
We have a 1930s department store display case up in the front section of the restaurant, which I found in a salvage auction in Connecticut. I spent a lot of time on eBay. The majority of our artwork on the walls are original fashion editor sketches, and you can see the original notes on them, which I think is fantastic because it tells the story of life that existed here. And I found some in an old bookshop, something that kind of tells a little bit of a story, always brings romance.
Like the Ragtrader, Broadway also paid tribute to the garment district. In 1954, it was the Pajama Game. Then in 1962, I Can Get It For You Wholesale featured a then unknown actor named Barbra Streisand. And in 1986, Rags paid tribute to the immigrant experience in this neighborhood.
Yeah, certainly immigrant focused. I would say you hit the nail on the head, predominantly Jewish to start with. Sam Landorf in particular was born on the Lower East Side. He went to work at 13 in the garment industry and worked his way up where he actually sweat equity'd his way into 25% of another company. We actually have some of the patterns that people used in the display case in Bo Peep, which is certainly an homage to these people.
For some of the staff of the Ragtrader restaurant and the Bo Peep Lounge, the spaces remain a repository of the energy of the people who once worked within these walls. So strongly, in fact, that the spirits lined up on the wall behind the bar may have the company of spirits of a different sort.
Actually, it's a funny story. There's a few members of staff that work here that are convinced the building is haunted, which I think is fantastic, because I don't. But I just think it's fantastic because there's a lot of stories within these walls, you know, so if the walls could talk, there'd be a lot of chatter.
For now, the restaurant is buzzing with the chatter of its eclectic and hip clientele. Mark is convinced that some of those conversations are sparked by the romance of the environment and the New York City history it so colorfully represents. I'm Patrick Pacheco for Arts in the City.
What started as a gesture for a friend's missed birthday turned into a multi-year art project that put smiles and hats on strangers. Susan Jhun has more.
Sometimes, you know, when people say, like, oh, I love your hat, what's that all about? I don't want to say anything.
But then designer Lee Kim reminds herself that her hat made of pipe cleaners is part of a social experiment on human connection that first started when Lee forgot the birthday of her good friend, Tracy.
I feel guilty and I wanted to show her appreciation. So I went to a dollar store, I got a package of pipe cleaners, probably about this many, and I made a tiny birthday crown, sent her birthday wishes.
And that tiny birthday wish took on a life of its own.
I thought if I can make something with pipe cleaners every day, and then somehow push myself to a place of discomfort, and then actually make a connection with others, that way, by 365 days, I will definitely be remembered.
Now 6 years later, Lee is still making and wearing what she calls her wearable Tracy.
365 days, one every day. And when the last day came, my daughter did not want me to stop. So she and I made a deal. I said, like, Hannah, if you want me to continue, you and I are gonna partner. You draw, and based on what you draw, I'm going to create wearable Tracy. And so she said, okay, deal, you know.
Kim says her creations take about 45 minutes to make and 50 pipe cleaners, and she has made over 2,000.
I wear it from 9 to 5 because that's the time when I go to work, go to meetings, and I thought I will be very uncomfortable, very challenged by people's view on, you know, how they look at me. There are so many people who stopped me and said, like, oh my God, tell me about what it is. But why are they stopping? Why aren't they continuing on? Because they have a desire to get to know another human being. What I learned about human connection is that if you block out the biases and allow the curiosity to come in, then there is really a lot of possibilities.
Human connection through the arts is a specialty of Lee's, which she explores at her not-for-profit collective, Design Dream Lab.
One of most exciting project I'm working on is called Museum of Our Traces. And it is an experience of allowing people to visit this imaginary museum. And people ask, like, so what is in the museum? There's nothing. The museum is designed so that you release some of your memories of your past and traces of your life. And that's what's going to be filling the museum. So as you exit out of the museum, you will look back and say, oh, that museum was empty. Now it's filled with the stories I heard from another person. And it's also filled with my memory that I have forgotten for a long time.
Lee's lab is a labor of love, much like her wearable Tracy, a social experiment that she says is invaluable.
It costs about $5 to drink a cup of coffee, and at the end of coffee, I have nothing other than caffeine in my body. But when I make pipe cleaner hat, there is so much possibility for me to connect with others, and so it's worth it. It's worth $2 to make it. So far, multiply $2 by 2,000, so I may have spent about $4,000. But I mean, it's priceless.
For Arts in the City, I'm Susan Jhun.
That is our show for today. Thanks so much for joining us. A quick reminder to check us out on social media. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Anne Riddell. See you next time on Arts in the City.